In this painting, I'm going to be painting a cat that represents the agencies and the maternity homes that my mother and I would have been through just before and just after my birth. This is my second version of this painting. I did one previously that I think is okay, but I felt like I could probably do it a little bit better, so this is me doing my second try at it. Therefore, it's Predatory version 2. I was recently talking to much younger adoptees, and I discovered that they didn't know much about closed record domestic adoptions, and that they definitely didn't know about the baby scoop era. They were mostly international adoptees or adoptees from open adoptions. If they were closed record adoptions, it was because they had been an open adoption, and then the records were eventually sealed for one reason or another. I'm a baby scoop baby myself. I'll tell my story here and what I know about my mother's story. It's not unusual at all for 1967. My mother would have been a 21-year-old college student and unmarried when she got pregnant after a party in 1966. From my research, I believe that she entered a maternity home run by a religious organization. The maternity home paid for itself through an arrangement that it had with an adoption placement agency, as well as through church funding. Some of this is just educated guesses on my part, based on my discussions with the adoption agency and with my research. I would ask my mother, but I've never actually spoken to her. My mother sent me back a single letter when I reached out to her recently. She said she wanted no contact with me now, although she didn't say why, and I've complied. However, I've demanded my records from the agency. I've seen my foster care notes. They say I cried a lot when I was left alone, so they put me down and left me alone a lot to train me to soothe myself as a newborn infant. I really don't expect that I'm going to get anything back from the agency. They're not in the business of assisting adoptees. They're in the business of placing adoptees and getting paid for it. All I'm probably going to get back from them is going to be the non-identifying information that I've had since I was first adopted. That's going to be about 5 paragraphs, short paragraphs, sometimes with some of the information redacted depending on who it is that's sending me the records this time. I'll do a different video later on the non-identifying information. I know that I went from the hospital directly to a group foster home, which is an orphanage just by another name. It was run by the adoption agency that eventually placed me. The agency was paid by the state for infant foster care. They were required by law to foster us for 1 month before they were legally eligible to place us. I don't know if my mother was ever even told what agency took me. The 1 month of foster care was to make sure that the newborn baby was not defective in some way. Adoptive parents who were willing to pay for babies wanted babies without physical or mental disabilities, and so that's what they were looking for. No drug addictions, no mental problems, a quality product. My adoption agency placed me on the day that the legally required 1 month of foster care was up. The adoption agency then charged my adoptive parents the equivalent of a new car in $1967. I have the invoices and the receipts. Some of that money undoubtedly went to the religious maternity home to assist in covering my mother's costs, but the agency was also paid by the state for my foster care in their group home, and they employed their own social workers who were again paid by the state to make a series of home visits to my adoptive parents, as well as to do interviews with my birth mother while getting her to sign the relinquishment papers. Between the state's payments and my adoptive parents' payments, I seem to have inadvertently paid a lot of people's salaries as a brand new baby. In the 60s, adoptive families were almost entirely white, heterosexual, married couples who were of middle class or upper middle class income. They were told by the agencies that they should pick a baby that matched both their skin color and their race, so the adoption could be hidden from everyone. My amended birth certificate lists my skin color. My race, however, was incorrect as provided by the agency. I was raised outside of my own culture because it was hidden at the time of my adoption. My mother seems to have been assured by the adoption agency that her anonymity would be assured. She doesn't seem to have understood that my adoption decree would contain her last name. When my adoption decree was signed, all of my vital records were sealed and my birth certificate was amended. It shows now that my adoptive parents are the ones who conceived me and gave birth to me, even though that's not the case, and I was told from the moment that I could speak that I was adopted. I'm not allowed to see my original birth certificate to this day, although it exists, because it's sealed away, and the laws of the state that I was adopted in have maintained that the records of adoptees born during the time that I was born should remain sealed. My mother was not, to my knowledge, offered any counseling or help following the birth. They didn't often waste resources on biological mothers after they were done with them. Before our births, there was likely some kind of counseling, but not the way we think of it now. Nobody was particularly interested in making sure a biological unwed mother was untraumatized. I've read quite a few transcripts from coercively worded interviews from state social workers. Unwed biological mothers were often told that they were giving their babies to a much more stable home with a traditional, middle-class, married couple, with a husband who had a professional job that could be listed on the birth certificate when it was amended following the adoption. In reality, adopting a child often proved to be much more difficult than any prospective adoptive parents were told that it would be. They were told the baby was a blank slate. Actually, adoptees often show signs of trauma from infancy onwards. Lots of marriages didn't survive much past the adoption. Often the adoptee would end up in a situation with divorced parents, being raised by a single mother, just like they would have been if their original mother had not relinquished them. This painting is done entirely in transparent watercolor. The only thing that is not transparent watercolor is my signature in pencil, which you can see me doing here. When I first planned this painting, I was just going to have the cat holding an egg, which was to represent me. But as I went along, I decided on thinking about it that I would add a cuckoo feather hanging out of the cat's mouth to show that the cat, which represents the agencies, had swallowed the cuckoo my mother pulled.